When a child actor got a lot of starring roles on shows like Touch by an Angel and in movies like Beethoven, people assumed that he would make it big one day. However, that day wouldn't come, and it wouldn't be because of failure. It would be because he vanished. Oftentimes, we hear about what happens to childhood actors once they get older, and usually it involves drugs, alcohol, scandals, or failure of some sort. But how often is it really that one of them simply vanishes off of the face of the earth with nothing but success on their resume and no scandals whatsoever under their belt? This is one of those rare cases. This is the story of Joseph David Wolfgang Pichler. Joe was born on Valentine's Day, February 14th, back in 1987 in Bremerton, Washington. He was the fourth of 5 children, but he wanted to be a little different. He wanted to be a child actor. Setting out to do just that, he immediately had some success. After doing some auditions, he got roles in about 6 videos and commercials nearby in Seattle. Given that things were looking pretty promising, his family decided to look into the next step. In support of this endeavor, his parents decided to move out with him to Los Angeles to see how an acting career might play out. It wasn't too long before he got some very 90s gigs, such as guest starring on an episode of Touch by an Angel in 1998. He also got a role in Music from Another Room and Varsity Blues, playing James Van Der Beek's on-screen brother. Joe's most well-known roles in any movies would come to be in the Beethoven series. Beethoven was one of the many pet movies of the 90s, featuring a happy family with some sort of sometimes talking animal as the main draw. Beethoven was about a St. Bernard puppy that quickly grew into a massive dog and caused a lot of comedic strain on his family. Joe got his role in both the third and fourth movie in the series in 2000 and 2001, playing Brennan, one of the main characters in the movie. Joe was treated well enough that he even got his own trailer while working on these movies, but it didn't really go to his head. The people who talked to him said that he was pretty grounded, not really taking things to an excess. In an interview with the media, speaking about the roles he wanted, Joe said, "I've said no to sex and drugs. I don't want to get typecast. I'd much rather do movies than TV. I like the whole atmosphere of changing characters and meeting new people." Even though Joe was only 14 years old by this point, he had already been acting in various roles for 10 years. He debated on playing in serious or comedic roles, but felt that serious movies might give him a better chance of getting an Oscar one day. However, Joe's career wouldn't go on much longer. His last appearance in a film would be in 2002 in an independent drama called Children on Their Birthdays. After that point, Joe's life would change fairly dramatically. Joe's family, especially his mother Kathy, started to feel like he eventually deserved a regular childhood at some point. She wanted him to experience going to school, getting some friends, having a part-time job, and really just having his own coming-of-age moments rather than simply acting them out for movies. Joe wasn't really happy with it, but he agreed to do it regardless. He packed up, took a break from working in Hollywood, and went back home to live with his family in Bremerton. Kathy later said, "I just wanted him to have some normalcy in his life. He's a good boy and took it well, but he wasn't really happy about it." After having only lived as a child actor up until this point, Joe abruptly began to live just like any other teenager. He went to high school, got braces, and made some friends, all while staying out of the limelight. This all continued until he graduated from Bremerton High School in 2005. For the time being, he accepted a job as a telephone technician at a company called Teletech nearby. Joe still wanted to go back to Hollywood. In fact, he said that he was only waiting a year for his braces to come off before heading back out. Around this time, when he turned 18, he got a pretty significant amount of money from a trust fund. This gave him a bit of extra funds to move out. He got his own place across town from where his parents, his older sister Samantha, and his younger brother Matthew lived. He still came out to see them pretty regularly, though. Joe lived life pretty much like any other 18-year-old with their own place. He started to experiment with drugs and alcohol from time to time, but he never really did go into an excess due to wanting to get back into acting at some point. He ate a bunch of Mexican food, hung out at Jack in the Box, and played with his pet guinea pig. All seemed pretty normal. But it was anything but that. Along came the day of January 5th, 2006. This would be the last time anyone would ever hear from Joe. Joe spent the whole night playing cards with a friend, but this friend eventually went home. All was quiet until about 4:15 a.m. Joe called his friend, obviously very drunk and very upset about something. This friend said that Joe was on his cell phone, sobbing, drinking, and sounding fairly incoherent. It seems that either this friend couldn't gather exactly what he was upset about or has kept it to himself over the years. It was evident that Joe had noticed he was having a meltdown. He started to calm down and promised his friend that he would call him back in about an hour. He never did, though. It seems word got back to Joe's family as his mother Kathy decided it would be best to send her other son Matthew to go check on Joe and make sure everything was alright. Matthew went over to Joe's place only to find his apartment completely unlocked with all the lights left on, something very out of character for Joe to do. Matthew waited an hour for Joe to come back, hoping that he had merely stepped out for a moment and would be back at any time now. After a while, it started to become more and more evident that this was not the case. The whole situation was odd enough that Kathy came out to check for herself that evening, seeing the same peculiar scene that her son did. Not only was the apartment left open, but Joe was also a pretty avid collector of Magic the Gathering cards. His card books were left open, and it was clear that the particularly valuable ones were missing. It was around this time that they realized that time was of the essence and they needed to report Joe missing. They worried if some sort of foul play may have taken place, given the strange way that his apartment had been left open. A few days came and went without any news. Joe never contacted anyone again, never came back to his place, and never showed up back in Hollywood. That is, until the police made a discovery. They found Joe's abandoned car near a body of water in a place called Port Madison Narrows, which also seems to be called Port Madison Bay. It's an area on the western shore of Puget Sound in western Washington. Joe's silver 2005 Toyota Corolla was found on January 9th, 4 days after he had gone missing. It was near the intersection of Wheaton Way and Sheridan Road in Bremerton. It seemed that all of his belongings were still in the car, including the cell phone that he had last used to call his friend. The only things missing were his wallet and his car keys. It's notable that his missing magic cards were nowhere to be found either. The police came across a strange, ominous-sounding note within his car. The note consisted of poetry, but also contained a note saying that he wanted his younger brother, Matthew, to have his belongings. While this reads like he might have intended on ending his life at first, the note also ended with Joe saying that he wanted to become a stronger brother for the sake of his siblings and that he wanted to start all over, making everything all the more confusing. The police themselves felt that the whole situation was fairly cut and dry. They assumed that Joe had ended his life by jumping off of the bridge and into the Port Madison Narrows. However, when they brought out some search dogs, none of them traced his scent over to any of the areas where one could jump off. His family added that they didn't feel he was suffering from depression or any sort of dark ideations. To them, he never showed any signs of having mental health problems and often spoke optimistically of getting back into acting very soon. They were much more concerned that he had met with foul play of some sort. Joe's family told the police of what they had found previously, the unlocked apartment with the lights on and the missing valuables. The police didn't really have much to tell them, still feeling that all the signs pointed to Joe having ended his own life. A detective even called Kathy and told her as such. But they never did find a body, and the scent dogs weren't able to trace where he might have gone. Even so, the police detective told Kathy, "I don't know how to say this to you without sounding really bad, but basically I think your son's dead, and it could take months for him to show up in the water." Days came and went, and this soon turned into weeks. 2 weeks after Joe originally went missing, his family did an interview with the media. His sister felt that he was still alive, feeling that he might now be too embarrassed to come home due to the way in which he left. She said, "He's probably too embarrassed to come home." Joe's younger brother Matthew, who first ventured out to his apartment, said, "In the worst-case scenario, if anything, it's foul play, but not suicide. He left that note saying he wanted to start over." Kathy herself felt, or possibly hoped, that Joe was still alive as well. She said, "There was no goodbye," as she spoke of the note he left behind. Contradicting their previous statements, the police came out to say that they weren't entirely sold on the idea that Joe had ended his own life, saying they were actually considering a wide array of possible scenarios that could have led to his disappearance. The Bremerton police detective Robbie Davis, though, said that he didn't believe Joe met with foul play, saying, "I have not found one person that has said anything bad about Joe." Hundreds of people came out from Bremerton and the surrounding areas to help search for Joe, but in the end, they didn't turn up even a single clue as to where he might have gone. Joe's family really started to get frustrated and lose hope as time went on, and they came to get a little irritated with the police, feeling they weren't really doing all that they could to help find their son. Kathy told the media, "They haven't fingerprinted his car. They sifted through it. They were in his apartment for about 3 minutes. They've done nothing."
There was a black glove sitting on the ground next to the driver door. We never did grab it. We didn't think anything of it to grab it.
Joe's family has even come to say that vomit was found in the back seat of Joe's car, but the police neglected to ever mention it, test it, or really do anything about it. And as it seems, there wasn't much more the police would or could do at this point. While it had already been weeks since Joe had gone missing, those weeks would turn into months, and those months would turn into years. All the while, not a single trace of Joe would ever come to surface. His body was never found, despite all of the other bodies of people who had jumped into the Narrows, usually coming to wash up on the shore somewhere down the line, leading many people who were on the side of Joe ending his life to wonder if he really wasn't dead at all. The problem is, there never has been one single clue otherwise. This left people with nothing to do but come up with their own theories as to what might have happened. One theory was that Joe did jump off the bridge and end his own life after all. However, people have a hard time coming up with a reason for it. If he really wasn't depressed and did have optimism about returning to Hollywood, it wouldn't make sense to end things now. He had no breakups, no legal trouble, no career-ending scandals, or anything else that might factor in either. But he did call his friends sobbing on the morning he went missing, which means he must have been upset about something at the least. Some have theorized that he was simply deeply unhappy since having to move back to his hometown and hit it well, or maybe felt like he wouldn't be able to land another acting job after being out of the game for so long. Of course, none of this can be confirmed, though. Another theory was that Joe did meet with foul play. However, like the previous theory, this one also has holes. Mainly, Joe didn't have any enemies, and there has never been a clue pointing towards foul play, only suspicions that it may have been a possibility. The only things that might point to this theory would be the missing magic cards and the vomit being found in the back seat of his car. The last theory is that Joe is still alive out there and simply doesn't want to be found. Some people believe this theory due to the fact that Joe left behind the note specifically stating that he wanted to start over and become a stronger brother. However, if he really did want to start over, wouldn't it be in the acting world that he wanted to return to so badly? It didn't seem like there was any reason for Joe to consider himself to be so weak, and most of all, it seems like someone really would have seen him in all of these years. Sadly, there have been no developments whatsoever since Joe went missing back in 2006. Years after the fact, his family are still searching for him. They still speak to the media from time to time, and they have even uploaded videos to YouTube in order to hopefully assist with the search. Joe's sister, Shauna, has said, "I know somebody knows something. People say it gets easier with time. I guess that's true when you know where the person is. The worst feeling out of all of this is the alone feeling. After time goes by, the press stops, people move on. But for us, it doesn't stop, it just keeps going." Joe's mother Kathy has also continued to express her frustration with the Bremerton police, still believing that they didn't do enough to find out what happened to her son when the scene was still fresh. In 2011, she wrote this on the Surviving Parents Coalition website. "My son, Joseph Pichler, went missing 5.5 years ago. His case was handled so poorly by police and most of the evidence was lost. Their mistakes were because local police didn't know the correct procedures for missing children/persons. Joseph is not a runaway. That's the only thing I know for sure about his disappearance. After nearly 6 years, we still have no resolution. I also struggle to get through each day without answers as to the whereabouts of my missing son." Just recently, the 25th anniversary of the release of Varsity Blues really brought this whole missing persons case back into the spotlight, as many fans were shocked to hear that the younger brother in the movie had been missing for years. It led to fans trying to track him down, hoping to maybe find him if he really was still out there somewhere. But as of this point at least, they haven't had any luck. Joe would be about 37 years old now. His family is still looking for him, hoping that one day they might find him out there somewhere. Various organizations have published age progression photos of what he may look like and posted them online. Joe is still missing, and it very well may stay that way. This case will likely be remembered as one of the strangest outcomes for a child actor that we have ever seen. Once again, thank you for watching my video. If you found it interesting, please give it a like, it really helps me out in the algorithm, and feel free to subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Just recently, I've started a podcast with 4 of my friends called the NBR Podcast. If you find this channel interesting, I think you might like that one too as well. I've also opened up a merch store recently where you can get yourself some Dire Trip t-shirts, link in the description below. If you want, go ahead and follow me on social media, as if anything were to ever happen to this channel, that would probably be the only way you'd ever hear about it. I also really appreciate when people support me on Patreon. There you can get videos early, ad-free, and uncensored. Channel memberships are back up too, and you can get the same benefits there as well. So, this has been your host Kyle. Thank you, and good night.